It's a paradox. Inflation is dropping, but prices aren't coming down. How can this be?
Because, you moron, there's still inflation. The inflation rate is lower, but that just means prices aren't going up as quickly, but they're still going up. For prices to come down, there would need to be deflation. For crying out loud, how come you don't know this?
Because corporations have enough monopoly power to keep them high.
Oh, shut up.
Here's just one example that'll make you fizz. Pepsi.
Pepsi isn't a monopoly, you dork. They don't even dominate the market. Coca-Cola has a bigger market share.
In 2021, PepsiCo, which makes all sorts of drinks and snacks, announced it was forced to raise prices due to higher costs. Forced? Really?
Yes, dumbass. Costs go up. You gotta pass that on to the consumer. Basic economics.
The company reported $11 billion in profit that year.
And that means what exactly? You know inflation means that $11 billion doesn't go as far as it used to, right? Inflation hits everybody. When PepsiCo encounters the costs of things that it'll use those profits to buy, then they'll get hit with higher price tags too.
In 2023, PepsiCo's chief financial officer said that even though inflation was dropping, its prices would not.
Right, because inflation dropping doesn't mean deflation, like I said. Are you really stupid, or are you just hoping your viewers are? According to the most recent figures from the U.S. Labor Department, inflation is down to 3.2% at the end of March. But that means that prices are still going up at a rate of 3.2% per year. The inflation rate would have to be negative for prices to go down. Hey, wait a minute. Didn't you used to be the head of the Labor Department? Shouldn't you know how this works?
How can they get away with this? Well, if Pepsi were challenged by tougher competition...
You mean Coke?
Consumers would just buy something cheaper.
Oh, you mean all those other brands at the store? Like Dr. Pepper, Shasta, Cheerwine, Sundrop, Dr. Brown's, IBC, Knee-High, just to name a few.
But PepsiCo's only major soda competitor is Coca-Cola, which, surprise, surprise, announced similar price hikes at about the same time as Pepsi.
Wow, must be a conspiracy. Or prices are going up for them, too.
We're seeing this pattern across much of the economy, especially with groceries.
Yeah, inflation will do that.
Inflation is down.
Wow, do I really have to say it again? It's down compared to where it was, but it's not zero. It's 3.2% according to the Department of Labor.
You see, the rate of inflation measures how quickly prices are rising.
Right. And they're still rising at a rate of 3.2% per year.
Prices are now rising far more slowly than in the past couple of years.
But still rising. So why would the price of anything be going down as a result?
And while supply chain disruptions really did make it more expensive to produce a lot of goods for a while, the cost to produce them now is rising more slowly than prices.
Yeah, because they're playing catch up. The supply chain disruptions during COVID were a major hit for them. And at the same time, a lot fewer people were buying. People were out of work. They weren't out at restaurants or wherever buying soda. And they were saving more because they didn't know what the future would hold. So prices had to constrict to numbers way lower than they normally would. What we're seeing here is sales going back up because people went back to work, started going out to restaurants and movies and other places where they bought soda, and started buying more groceries like soda that are seen as being more optional. So yeah, production is having to ramp back up again. Production of an entirely new supply chain that had to be created after the old one was destroyed. That explains everything you're seeing.
They can get away with overcharging you because they have monopoly power.
Oh, for the love of Mike, you just said they had competition from Coke!
If Pepsi and Coca-Cola had lots of competitors,
They do.
they wouldn't be able to raise prices so high because someone would make cheaper substitutes, and consumers would buy those instead.
But those other sodas, Dr. Pepper and the rest, can't do that because inflation increased costs for them too.
But Pepsi and Coke own most of the substitutes.
No, they don't. They don't own Dr. Pepper. Shasta is owned by National Beverage. Cheerwine is made by Carolina Beverage. Dr. Brown's is its own company, as is Knee-High.
This isn't just happening with Coke and Pepsi. Take meat products.
Yeah, because inflation is up for everybody.
At the end of 2023, Americans were paying at least 30% more for beef, pork, and poultry products than they were in 2020. Why?
Inflation.
Near monopoly power.
Bullshit. Plenty of different meat companies.
Just 4 companies now control processing of 80% of beef, nearly 70% of pork, and almost 60% of poultry.
That's not a monopoly. That's pretty much the opposite of a monopoly.
So, of course, it's easy for them to coordinate price increases.
Oh, I see. It's a conspiracy. Hey, YouTube, you gonna take down Reich's video because he's a conspiracy theorist?
So what can we do?
Well, you could shut your lying mouth for a start.
Well, it's largely flown under the media radar, but the Biden administration is taking on this monopolization with the aggressive use of antitrust laws.
You know, we've had antitrust laws since 1890. If they were going to work, wouldn't they have worked by now?
It's taken action against alleged price fixing in the meat industry, which has been a problem for decades.
Funny, though, that meat prices generally rise at a rate lower than inflation. Have they been fixing the price to be lower than it would otherwise be? Wouldn't that be a good thing for consumers? But you know what would make it even cheaper? Getting rid of the USDA and letting us buy from local farmers. That'd get the price way down, help the local economies, and even be healthier to boot. When COVID hit and the big companies had trouble supplying local grocery stores, these small farms said they had plenty and could serve locally. Thomas Massie introduced legislation that, just for the duration of COVID, just as an emergency measure, would allow them to supply meat to local grocery stores. And he couldn't get it passed. If you want to do something, how about getting behind the Prime Act? If you're going to complain about these big companies that dominate the market, how about complaining about the government agencies that create that situation to begin with? And all of the politicians they have in their back pockets. Oh, right, because those agencies and politicians are on your team. That's why you're having to concoct this bullshit.
It's suing Amazon for using its dominance to artificially jack up prices, one of the biggest anti-monopoly lawsuits in a generation.
Except that Amazon products are generally cheaper than they are from their brick-and-mortar competition. Something leftist state attorneys general have sued them for, calling it cutthroat competition. So Amazon's prices are too high and too low.
Inflation is down. But many people don't feel it because prices are still high.
You yourself just explained why that is. Did you not think through this video? Or are you just hoping your audience won't?
And in some cases are still rising because of continued price gouging.
No, inflation. More money chasing fewer goods and services. 25% of all the dollars that have ever existed were created in the last 4 years. That's going to have an effect on prices. And it happened because of the biggest monopoly in the country, the Federal Reserve System. Since our money was made literal monopoly money in 1913, the value of the dollar has been slashed over 96%. Why don't you complain about that monopoly too?
This is where you have more power than you might think. You might not be able to break up big corporations, but you can keep up the pressure on our government to fight corporate monopoly power.
What about fighting government monopoly power? So thanks for watching. Please hit like and subscribe, leave a comment, and go to donate.bogosity.tv to keep me doing what I do. And check out all the great content here, like this video selected just for you.